Okay. So to start, I just want to quick go over what our week is going to look like. If you were to look at week 3, you would see our agenda. And on our agenda, we have Monday, which is today. We are going to learn how to use our graphing calculator using quadratic equations. And that's a skill that, we learned how to graph by hand last week. Now we're going to use our calculator as a little backup just in case things don't go perfectly when we do it by hand. Um, there is a little instructions here. I'll have you click on that later on. You don't have to do it right now. But then we're going to have an in-class assignment that you're going to post to Schoology when you're done. And then we have separate homework tonight. I want to make sure you guys understand that. We have an activity that has to be done in class, and then you're going to do the Delta Math Chapter 4 review assignment this afternoon as homework. Just as a little side note, I just put remember to work on all missing work. Your last chance to turn homework in is the Chapter 4 test, which is Sunday, April 4th at 11:59. On Wednesday, so what happens on Wednesday? Assuming everything is fine and I don't have to quarantine, I am expecting to be in person on Wednesday. If not, I will message you out and we'll just meet together on Zoom as well. But we're going to review for the Chapter 4 test on Wednesday in class. And then for homework, your homework then would be to take the Chapter 4 test. However, I would like this due earlier, the sooner the better. But we have to explain what that test is going to look like, which we'll do on Wednesday. And that'll give you an idea of what's expected. And then your goal is to complete that hopefully before Sunday, but the absolute last day for this test is Sunday, April 4th at 11:59. We do not have school on Friday, so keep that in mind. And then when you click on the Monday folder, I have the same directions for what we're doing Monday in class. That link is here as well. And then here's the spot where you're going to have 4 problems to do in class, and you'll post that to this assignment. And then the Delta Math, when you get done with Delta Math, you're going to click on that, and you'll post that assignment as well. I have recorded from my first hour class. To be honest, this is a little bit of a mess because I was adjusting on the fly, and so it's not awesome, but it could do. I am recording this hour's class, hoping it goes smoother, and I will replace that video. I'll put it here so that way anything we talk about in class, you guys can always go back and look at it. So let me show you this. If I click on this link, it's going to open up something that looks like this. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to teach you how to use your graphing calculator today. And you will have to use either your handheld graphing calculator or you're going to use the simulator that is on all Chromebooks from Tartan. So if you have a school laptop, you can look at right on the desktop or right on the, I think it's the desktop, right on the desktop, you click on the TI-84 Plus app, should look like a calculator, and that will bring up your calculator. So everybody should have access to either their own calculator or the app on their Chromebook. Now, there is a short video here that Miss Hires goes through the instructions. So it's going to be a little bit shorter than what we talk about today, and it's meant to just give you a quick little hit. If you forgot something, you can always go back and watch that. But she also has, Miss Hires listed out the steps that you need to do and how to find that in your calculator. So if you just need a quick refresher, this might be faster than just watching the video again. But please note that those are the resources for you to use. Some of you already know how to use your calculator really well, but I'm hoping that we can teach you some new things here today. So what's the assignment then for in class? It is these 4 problems down here, and your goal is to graph using your calculator, but then draw an accurate sketch on graph paper with the following points. You want to label the vertex, which is your max or min, your axis of symmetry, all zeros or x-intercepts, and the y-intercept, if possible. Notice here it says if possible. Sometimes you don't have any real zeros, or sometimes your y-intercept is so big that it's doesn't make sense to put it on your graph. So we'll talk about that today. Okay, so I know this isn't going to be ideal. You don't have the T84. Ooh, and calculator. Okay. I might, you know what? I'm going to try something right now. Um, I'm not positive if this is going to work for you guys or not, but if you don't have a calculator, in the chat right now, I just sent you a link. And let me show you what that link looks like when we open it. Okay, I guess this is our way of getting around if you don't have a calculator. And this isn't perfect, but it should work if you just don't have access. So if you opened up that link that I just sent you, it takes you to a test navigation site, which is just, it has a calculator on there that should work. But here's how you have to do it. So you have to click start. And again, I'm not positive if this link works for you guys. I know it works for me. It should work for you, but I'm just not positive. So if I click on start and click start again, we don't really care about anything on this page other than if you keep clicking start, you'll get to this point where you can click on the calculator. And then that should allow you to use that calculator. So Ella, let me know if that worked. Yeah, some people don't have the school Chromebook. It says you have to sign in. Shoot. I'm not positive how. Okay. Um, let me see if I can think of another way to get you access. So hang tight. I will troubleshoot that and let you know. If not, we can wait till you get your calculator back, and that's completely fine if we're a day or two late on this. So, okay, I'm going to be using this calculator just because it's easier for me to show you guys. But let me show you what we're doing. Our goal is to learn how to use our calculator to find these four pieces. Okay, and by the way, don't take notes today. You don't need to write any of this down. I just want to show you. I want this to be quick and something you can just quickly make reference to. So my goal is, oh, I don't want that. I want this. My goal is to show your calculator, and if you have your own calculator on hand, you could do this. Otherwise, just pay attention. I don't think it's really easy for you guys to do the calculator app right now and follow along with me. And like I said, I'm making a video of this, so you can always go back and watch it. But if I look at this part, what form is the quadratic in? Well, this is our standard form where we have the ax squared plus bx plus c. This form isn't very easy to determine vertex and axis of symmetry. You had to use that special equation, opposite b over 2a. But if we graph it, you can find these points very quickly. So what do? You go to y equals. When you open y equals, the first thing you want to do is if there's anything in these, and I would recommend scrolling down, by the way, because sometimes there's like a weird random equation that got put there, and that can screw things up. But you want all of those to be cleared out. Okay, so you're going to go to y1, and you just want to type this equation in. Now, usually the first question I get is, where's the x? It's right here. It's diagonal to the second button. So that's my variable x. You can see it highlight in red. So I'm going to type x squared minus 6x plus 4. And then I'm going to graph. I'm just going to hit graph and see, do I get the graph that I need to see? And in this case, yes, I can see the full parabola. I can see the y-intercept. I can see the x-intercept and the vertex. So now the question is, how do I find those points? I want to point this out right away. Some students have hit trace before, and then they just try to scroll, but notice this isn't perfect, right? I want the exact value that my calculator will give me. So this value is not perfect for an x-intercept, and it's not perfect for a vertex either. This trace is only like a guess feature. So the only reason why I use it is to get it in the right spot. Well, let's find the vertex. So what I'm going to do is go second calc. Notice that blue calc, it's second trace. When I hit calc, look at the options that I have. I can find a value, I can find the zeros, which the zeros are the same as the x-intercepts. I can find a min or a max, and then I can find if two things intersect. Options 6 and 7 are calculus terms, and we're actually not going to use 5 either. So we're going to potentially use step or option 1, 2, 3, or 4 today. And it all came from second calc. All right, now let's find the vertex first. Well, what is the vertex? The vertex is either the max or the min. And I have options. Is it option 3 or option 4? Well, that depends on the graph. And when I looked at the graph, you could clearly see that this was a minimum because it's the lowest point. I also know because I have an a value of positive 1, the graph is going to open upward. So I'll just go second calc, and I want to pick minimum. Now, you may have to scroll your cursor over left or right, but here's how I do it. It says left bound. Well, we have to pick a point that is to the left of this minimum value. So if you're not sure, the best way to do it is bring your cursor to where you think the vertex is and hit the left arrow a couple of times. You can clearly see we're left of this vertex. Then I hit enter. See that line? That logs in a data point that is to the left of the vertex. And then it says right bound, which means I need to bring this cursor over to the right of the vertex. So I'm going to go, it doesn't matter how far you go. You can go way past, you can just barely go past, but you need to be to the right of this, and it logs in that data point. And then it says take a guess. When it says take a guess, you just hit enter. Anytime it says take a guess, just hit enter. And notice, I get my answer, 3.000. Well, we round to 3 decimal spots. So in this case, my point is over 3, down -5. Right? So I'm going to just quick record that. Let's say that if I was doing this, where's the cursor? It's the blinky, see that thing that's blinking? That's the cursor. And that will move when you press the left and right arrows. Okay, so I'm just going to record what I found. I knew that it was the lowest point, so I had a minimum, and that minimum is the vertex which occurred at the spot 3, -5. Now, we know from our learning that the axis of symmetry is the x value. So we get x equals 3, that's my axis of symmetry. Okay, so you do have to know that. The calculator will not directly tell you the axis of symmetry. You have to know that it's the x coordinate of your vertex. That's where it would be a dotted line if we drew it right down the middle. So that's how you find the vertex, pretty quick. Now I got to find the zeros. Well, we know there are 2 zeros, one here and one here. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is go back to that calc, so second trace, and I want to scroll down to 0. Now pay really close attention to this. When I hit enter, it says left bound. Well, you have to know what you're doing. It's the left bound of the 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that cursor that's flashing, and I'm going to bring it close to the 0. Right? That's where I think the 0 is. So I need the left bound of that. So I'm going to hit the left arrow a couple of times, and you can see that my cursor is now to the left of that 0. So I'll hit enter, and you can't really see it, but you can see the dotted line there. And now it says right bound question mark. So I need to bring my cursor back to roughly where I think the 0 is and go to the right a couple clicks. You can go further, or you can just go a couple clicks. You don't need a ton. Hit enter, and then those are my data points, and it's going to find the guess. Now that it says guess, you hit enter, and there's one of my zeros. 0.763, but we're going to round that up to a 764. And notice the y value is 0. We wouldn't be able to get that just by using the trace feature. So you have to use the second calc. All right, so I'm going to record that down here. I'll do that in a second, but I need to find the other 0. You do it the same way. Second calc, Go to option 2 is 0. And then I'm going to scroll over. Now notice it says left bound. So what I like to do, especially once you're just first learning this, is bring your cursor to where you think that 0 occurs, and then hit the left arrow a couple of times. Notice we're to the left of this point on the curve. Hit enter. Now it says right bound. Now you got to bring this to the right. So there's my cursor. I think that's the 0. I'm going to press the right arrow a couple times so I'm past that 0. Then it says take a guess. Hit enter. And this brings up a really important point. Look at this y value. That is scientific notation for basically saying 0. So if you see the E in there, that just means 0. All right, so I get 5.236, and then I would call that 0. Now I think, if I remember right, I saved these. I did, and actually you can see the time I did it before, I actually ended up getting 0, which is fine. Sometimes it's 0, or sometimes it is the scientific notation, which means 0. All right, so these are my intercepts, which, find my pen, I'm going to round those to the nearest third decimal, 0.764, and 5.236. Now, officially, I didn't talk about graphing yet. I'm just using my calculator to get this information. All right, last one, the y-intercept. Okay, how do we do the y-intercept? Well, the y-intercept is whenever x is equal to 0. So there's two ways to do this. The one way is go second calc and pick option 1. Anytime you want to just find a value, you can pick option 1 and then type in, I want it when x is 0. And notice that's the location, 0, 4. Okay. Now, that's the x-intercept is over 0, up 4. Remember, we could have found that by plugging 0 in here and here, and look at the only thing that's left over is the plus 4. So that's where that comes into play. But you don't absolutely need that. The other way to do that is, what if I hit trace? If I hit trace and just type in 0, it automatically brings me to that point. Now, why is that important? Well, let's say I have all this information and I want to find out a couple more points to make my graph accurate. So what if I wanted to know the value when x was 2? Just type in 2 and it'll bring you right to that answer. So notice, I know another point on this graph, 2, -4. Well, what about 5? I type in 5. 5 is at -1. What if I wanted 6? 6 is at 4. So you can use that feature to just keep getting more and more points to graph a more accurate graph. So that's how you use your calculator. It's all in second calc, and it's option 1, 2, 3, or 4. Now notice we didn't use maximum on this one because this graph does not have a maximum. It only has a minimum. If it was flipped upside down, then we would use the maximum versus the minimum. So what's your homework going to look like? You need to identify these pieces, and then you need to create a graph like this. And you'll hand draw it, obviously. You don't have to do it digitally like I did. But here's what I'd like you to do, because I want to make sure that you use your calculator correctly. And then you're going to label all of those points. Okay? You're going to go here and say, all right, here is my vertex. So you're going to label vertex, and you're going to put the ordered pair. What is the vertex? It's right here. That's what we found, 3, -5. Okay. And then you're going to identify the axis of symmetry. That's the dotted line. And you're going to label it axis of symmetry. If you want to abbreviate, you can. But this has the equation x equals 3. Right? We knew that because it was the x value of my vertex. All right? Then you're going to go to the zeros. You just found these two zeros. This is go over 0.7. So if I go over 0.764 up 0, you're going to call that, you could either use the word 0 or you could say x-intercept, and you're going to label the point. And then you're going to do the next one, go over 5.236 comma 0. And that's your x-intercept as well. Okay, and then the last one is you're going to graph the y-intercept right here. And you're going to label it 0, comma 4. So you should have an image that looks just like this for every problem in the in-class activity. Okay. There was a question. I'll answer that question here in a second, Kyle. I think we're going to look at a couple more. I just want to show you some options here. Now, I'm not going to go through all of this on this one, but notice this form. This is in vertex form. So remember what vertex form is? That's the one where you can find the intercepts pretty easily. They're opposite of what you think. So here, the intercept would be 4, and the intercept would be -1. They're opposite of what you think. So I already know those answers right here. If you don't need a calculator for it, you don't have to use it. Okay, but finding the vertex and axis of symmetry would be a lot faster if you just type this into your calculator. Now, I did all those. You can see them here. Here's my x-intercepts. Here's the vertex. I didn't put the dotted line in yet, but that's the axis of symmetry. By the way, my pen is not working very well today, so it's like extra sloppy compared to usual. And then the y-intercept is at the spot 0, 8, and your graph should look like this with all the words labeled. You can abbreviate that as axis of symmetry, and then vertex, x-intercepts. So this one is nothing special. I just wanted to point out the other form. But look at this problem, okay? Now, I'm going to show you how to type this problem into the calculator because a lot of students make errors when we have fractions. And if I put this into the calculator, my advice is anytime you have a fraction, you should put parentheses around it. Okay? Just that will reduce a lot of potential errors. So again, you don't have to write any of this, just kind of watch. I'm going to go to y equals, I'm going to clear out my old equation and type in the new one. But an important thing, see this negative? That is not a subtraction sign. You have to use the negative sign, which is down here on the calculator. So I'm going to go parentheses, -1 divided by 7. And that's how you get a fraction, is -1 divided by 7. There's another way, but I think this is the easiest. And then I need parentheses, x minus 5, parentheses, squared. Now, this negative is a subtraction sign, so I have to use the minus symbol, and then I'm going to put parentheses 3/7. Okay. When I graph that, notice how my graph is not perfect. I can't see basically that full U shape of a graph. So in this case, you can play around with your window. I need to see more to the right and a little bit more to the bottom. So I'm going to hit window. And if I want to see more to the right, that's the x max value. So I think I might increase that to 20. And again, this is just guess and check. If you change it, usually we like -10 to 10, but if you change it, just keep changing numbers until you get a good graph. And then same thing down here, I want to see lower in the y value, so I might go -20. And I'm just going to hit graph and see what that looks like. That's a lot better graph. Okay, now I got to find the vertex. So I'm going to go second calc. And because this is a downward opening parabola, because the a value is negative, I'm going to go to maximum. And now it says, do you want the left bound? Yeah, I'm going to hit the left arrow, so I'm to the left of the vertex. And then I'm going to go to the right of that. So I want to go past the vertex to the right, hit enter, enter again. And notice I get 4.99. That's really close to 5. Right? So I'm going to call this 5 comma negative 0.429 when I round it. But there's my vertex, which also gives me the axis of symmetry. And I have that right here. But notice something here. It says find the zeros. Well, there are no zeros. This graph does not cross the x-axis, so there are no real zeros. In that case, you could write none. Now, we do know that there are zeros. They're imaginary. So we could try to solve this by foiling up. We're not going to, by the way. Don't do this. We just are recording the real zeros here. But I want you to know that if we were to set this equal to 0 and solve using maybe the quadratic formula, once it's in the right form, you would actually end up with a negative under the square root, and you'd get an imaginary answer. So that's why it's present on the graph. All right, and then the last part, now I have to find the y-intercept. That's this point right here. Well, that's easy. I'm just going to hit trace and 0, and it'll bring me right to that y-intercept. 0, negative 4. Now, this brings up an interesting point. 2 points is not enough for me to accurately graph. Call that the axis of symmetry. 2 points is not enough for me to get a really good graph. So I'm going to take this point, which is 5 units away, and reflect it over. So I automatically have another point there. But then I might want to get an extra couple of points. And we want to get numbers close to this axis of symmetry. Well, the axis of symmetry is x equals 5. So what about if x was 4? We have our calculator, and I'm going to do, I could actually just type in 4, because I already hit trace before. So if I do that, here's a point. That's not super friendly though, but it still exists. So what about maybe x equals 3? Ooh, that's friendly. So if I use x equals 3, that was 2 units away from the axis of symmetry. What if I went 2 the other way and tried 7? Notice it's the same value. So that just gave me 2 extra points really quick. I go over 3 down 1, there's a point. And if I went over 7 down 1, there's another point. And that just gives me more points to be a little bit more accurate with my graph. Okay. There was a question. Kyle, I think your question, you know what it might be? When you open up that link, so when you open up the link that is in, let me pull it up, the link that's in Schoology, you are going to have to download it. Don't just open it up in the view. Download the whole thing. Otherwise, it will not look like this. But here are the 4 assignments. So if that link didn't work well to show the problems, maybe you just want to do a screenshot of this right here. But here's what we got then today. Your homework in class for the rest of the time is to use your graphing calculator to produce a graph, just like we talked about, for these 4 problems. And then you're going to take a picture and you're going to submit a picture. Now this will be on graph paper. You're going to submit to Schoology. All right, so that's the in-class work that we're going to do today. And then once you're done with that, you can start on Delta Math homework, which you're going to do a screenshot of and then post to Schoology. Okay, now I know that I just covered a lot of that information very quickly, which is why I'm going to take the video that I just had and I'm going to